Thanks.
Let's talk more about the midterms and bring in Jennifer Kerns, a Republican strategist and former spokesperson for the California GOP. Jen, always great to have you with us. Of course, we're just talking about campaigning and fundraising, but aside from all of that, there's so much happening in D.C. right now, including that anonymous op-ed that came out in the New York Times, and the president commenting on that and saying that he's looking at the possibility of legal action against the newspaper. Is this a good idea, or should he just let it go and move past it?
Well, a message that plays particularly well with President Trump's base is that the press is the enemy of the people, quote unquote. And I think that is something you'll hear him continue to talk about on the campaign trail. And if you look at what the administration has done, they have actually gone after leakers. There were a couple of folks that were holdovers from the Obama administration that they had leaked classified or confidential information. You know, when you become an employee of the White House, especially a senior administration official, you do sign certain non-disclosure agreements, not just with the campaign, but actually as a senior government official. So it's possible that this person, whomever they were that wrote this, might have broken a personnel agreement, and that could be serious business. And they might have also broken national security ethics standards.
Jen, this is not the first time we've had leaks out of the White House. It's not even the first time we've had people openly question maybe whether the president was up to the job. We had that with Ronald Reagan, for example.
Yeah.
We had that. But does President Trump, to some extent, leave himself open to these comments, these questions, because of his own performance? Some of the tweets that he puts out, some of these things he says, some of these react. We're watching the president actually just arriving right now in North Dakota. But does he leave himself open to some of this criticism?
Well, there's no doubt about it. He is bombastic. But the American people knew that they were not electing a perfect person. They knew they weren't electing a choir boy. They actually liked the fact that he was going into the swamp and talking tough and being willing to blow up the boxes, so to speak. But we're seeing now with these attacks on President Trump, what actually happens in the case of when you do take on the swamp, then you have the swamp part and parcel go against you. And historically, this is what they call.
Jen, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. He brought some of the swamp with him. It's been a while since we had a president this early in a term who's had this many people close to him indicted and some of them convicted. I mean, let's be fair. Let's be fair.
Well, that's true. On the Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort, I agree with you. But if you look at what the liberals have done over time, you look back decades, they have actually used psychological attacks as political attacks. This goes back to the Soviet era. Mostly totalitarian governments are the ones that use this. So I think the left is taking a page out of this playbook. You look at countries like Russia. They often use the psychological attack against their political dissidents.
But
they throw them in prison.
Political dissidents. A lot of them are people who actually the president appointed himself. So after they leave office, they're like, oops, no, this was a bad idea.
Well, but the New York Times, I would be willing to bet when we find out the identity of the person who drafted that anonymous op-ed, I believe we'll find out that that is an Obama loyalist, an Obama holdover that just has an axe to grind with the president. But again, if you look at these political attacks, this is an actual term that is used with totalitarian governments. It's the political weaponization of psychology. It's been used in communist China. It was used in South Africa in apartheid. They imprisoned people. They called leaders unfit to govern. They're doing the same exact thing to President Trump that they did in these cases.
So the president right now speaking to supporters in North Dakota, he'll go campaigning. He's of course backing some of the candidates there, including Representative Kevin Cramer, who's challenging Heidi Heitkamp, the senator. Is it a good idea for him to be in the field for so many days? We're now expecting 40 plus days of him campaigning for the candidates.
Yeah, I think it is. I think President Trump's approval rating is actually pretty high for a guy who's been under attack for 2 years. His approval rating, depending on which poll you look at, is about 46%. That's pretty good. It's higher than Barack Obama's was at that point in the presidency. It's higher than any other Republican president was in this part of his presidency, other than George W. Bush in the immediate days after 9/11.
Okay, but his strong disapproval rating is higher than anybody's had. If you look at the Washington Post, ABC News poll from last, the strongly disapprove was well over 50%, and his strongly approve was down around 25%.
Yep,
so
correct.
That disparation, that's different from what we've seen before.
It is, but two things. One, that poll was taken the very week that Manafort was sentenced. It also came as Michael Cohen's plea came through. And I'll tell you what about the ABC News Washington Post poll. I look at the numbers. I've lived and died at the ballot box by the numbers. Wouldn't have a career without looking at the numbers. And you look at the ABC News Washington Post poll, they got the 2016 presidential election wrong by 10 points or more. The night before the election, they said Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide. There were only 3 pollsters that got the 2016 presidential election right. I look at those polls and I give credence to those. The rest is garbage in, garbage out.
So what does 538 say? Because 538 had that race within the margin of error.
They did, but they also got it wrong. Nate Silver even did a mea culpa.
Well, they didn't get it wrong because it was within the margin of error. As long as you're within the margin of error, it can't be wrong.
Well, that's true, but Nate Silver did a big piece saying, here's how we got it wrong. We misread the election. Look, I think Nate Silver has gone back to the drawing board. I think 538 is on top of the midterms. I would look to Nate Silver to accurately predict the midterms.
Okay, Jen Kerns, GOP strategist. Thanks so much, Jen. It's always great to have you here.
Thank you.